Hello, everyone. Just wanted to make sure we were on the same page for the assignments this week. We've got quiz 8 and 9 due Sunday at midnight, but there's also going to be a discussion board post. So, real quickly, right, if you go to course information, course content, if you go to the second module, like SA2, right, SA2 there, exemplification. If you look at the first four submodules on the right side under that, right, you'll see the assignment for the exemplification, a writing exercise 2 bit of information that you'll need to make that Friday night post there with 2 responses by Sunday night at midnight. And then where it says readings and quizzes, that's where you access the departmental quiz articles, right, for those 2 quizzes there. So you read them and then you answer. One is about censorship. Now, normally when I teach pathos, logos, and ethos, I actually do usually use Martin Luther King's letter from a jail in Birmingham, because you can look at the audience that he's writing to and see how those examples that he chose exemplify ethos, pathos, and logos. So we'll probably do that next week, right? I'm going to spend a little bit more time breaking down that one. But audience awareness and purpose, right, I think is what makes that such a rhetorically effective piece. Now, one of the things that we should talk about is from here on out, all your major essays are going to have a thesis statement that you are arguing. So the topic could be healthcare. That's just a general topic. That's not your position on it. A thesis statement should have a position. You should say something like, because of the lack of availability and price of healthcare, healthcare in the United States is blah, blah, blah. That's a position there, right, that you're going to take on that particular issue. So, having said that, writing exercise 2, I need to define that just a little bit for you. You are picking a controversial topic and you're posting publicly on it under the discussion board there, but while you were talking about why it's controversial in 350 words, you are not actually telling me your side on it. So I'm going to use an example I don't want you to use for it in just a minute here. So in general, pick a topic you think is controversial, talk about why it's controversial, and give examples to prove it. So exemplification proves something by example. That doesn't mean the entire thing has to be one big example. It can be your smaller details, your supporting details that are supported by this example. And this second essay is by exemplification. So there's 2 basic topics for this: technology and education, and advertising and its effect on the consumer. As you can see if you click through those first 4 modules there. So that paper is not going to be due for a while. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, if you look on those paper assignments, the first point is always don't use I. I just kept the departmental standards. You can use I and personal pronouns in the papers that you write for my class. Even though I just kept their standards up there, you can use I. That's fine. Your thesis is your position, really, right? However, I still don't like statements like, this paper is going to argue. Just argue it. Just put it out there, right? So make your paper do, right, rather than say what you're going to do, right? And that's a little distinction there. They can be tricky until you get used to the idea that you're not stating what you're going to do, you're just doing it. Okay, I tend to like that kind of direct assertion there a little bit more than my paper will first do this, 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 and this, and then you actually wind up doing that a little bit later. For long papers, that can be useful for readers, but for really short papers, or 600 words is not necessarily that long. I think you should just do it. Just directly state it. Right? Go ahead and just get it out there. Okay, a couple things there. The sources. It does require sources this time. I'm going to be going over MLA a little bit more next time. When so next week we'll have that MLA format thing there. Now, you can, even though the instructions say pick one of these 2 topics and here's the source that you're going to use, I feel like some of those sources are a little bit outdated. If you want to find something else that you think would be appropriate and use it, you can always do additional sources and use that quote. So you do want to quote something in this. Try to avoid just making it a drop quote where it doesn't have any relationship to what you're talking about before and after. Everything that you use does not have to agree with your position, though. A good argumentative paper should include things from multiple sides there. So while in general your position should be stated clearly and you are kind of presenting information that supports it, you can deal with opposing sides, even if that's from a source that's external to you. Okay, you don't have to come up with the opposing arguments all on your own, but you can if you want to. So you need a quote, 600 words. It's going to be on one of those two topics, the technology on education. However we feel about that, right? I certainly have my opinions about the effectiveness or efficacy of those particular innovations that we've made, and I do tend to prefer the face-to-face just because I feel like it's easier for me to see if you understand something. It's easier for us to practice, and do those kind of things. So, but you can have any position that you want, right? Certainly, it's more convenient. So you're putting a position on those, or the consumer and advertising one, and feel free to use additional sources, even though the instructions don't necessarily say that there. All right, so back to writing exercise 2. I'm going to give you an example, and I don't want you to use this one, okay? I don't like final papers on this because the topic is so polarizing, right? It's certainly controversial, so I'm just gonna do this one real quickly here and get it out of the way. I want you to pick something else besides this one. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to take the abortion topic here, and you should not know when I'm done with this what my position is, right? So it's a very controversial topic because people start with different starting assumptions about what human life actually is. So one person can say clearly, right? I am the person involved here. There's no other people, so it's my right to do what I want with my body. And another person might say no, right? Clearly there's another life that's going to be involved there, and that life might even begin as early as conception, right? For some religious backgrounds, right? That's a pretty common, claim that's made. And so obviously, right, if you can't be certain when a life actually begins, then there's a lot of a gray area there, but you're not going to convince someone to change their position unless something life-changing happens to them. So it's a controversial topic because there's different starting assumptions. And for some people, it does seem to be a matter of life and death, right? If they are of the opinion that there's two lives or more involved rather than just one. Now, another thing that is problematic with this topic is that the law is not consistent in whether it treats developing fetus as a human being or not. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So there are something called the Scott-Peterson laws, where Ms. Peterson was abducted and she was pregnant, right? And she was murdered, and the baby, the fetus, the developing fetus, obviously also perished, and so they were able to get the perpetrator on multiple counts of homicide instead of just one. And that's actually a law now, right? If there's a case of abduction and there's murder, federal law kicks in, right? And if the woman was pregnant, right, it counts as multiple counts of homicide there. So in that case, right, the fetus is recognized as a full adult human being with rights, and in other cases it's not. So the law isn't even consistent on whether it judges a fetus as a human being. So that is part of the reason that it's such a controversial topic. Now, if you were going to write about this, which I really don't like it as the final argumentative topic unless you have a very interesting take on it. So this is the metaphor that I always give to kind of create a comparison. It may be a false analogy, right? But one of the things, let's imagine it's the future, and I'm a pregnant woman, and that genetic engineering is now possible, and that I'm a big fan of things like fantasy novels and Game of Thrones or whatever, and I've decided, right, I want my children to be dragons. So the technology's there. I want them scaled. I want them to have wings. I want them to be able to breathe fire. Let's make it so. Do I actually have the right to make my children in the future dragons? Why or why not? Is that the same as the case with abortion, or is it different? So, I mean, if you're going to explore some topics, then it's worthwhile thinking outside the box. Now, that may not be a useful way to talk about that. It may not convince anybody or make them think about it in a different way. They may still stick with their starting assumption. So, in general, for this exercise, you can pick any controversial topic except abortion, which I just kind of went over, and talk about examples of why it's controversial. You don't have to put your position. I'd rather you don't. If you feel like you have to put your position, I'm not going to silence you. But remember, it is public, right? And so the semester before, I had a student who clearly put her position, and it was very slanted on one particular thing, and I felt like there might be some people in the class who would respond to it, and I'm like, you don't have to put your, she cleared it with me first. I was like, you really don't have to put your position. I'm not going to make you change it, but you might want to just not state that outright the way she stated. She's like, oh, I know everybody in the class, they'll be fine with it. So I mean, she's already familiar with the people in there and was comfortable putting that out. But I don't want to make you put anything that you were uncomfortable posting in public there. You can talk about a controversial topic, but it doesn't have to include your position. When you go to write an argumentative paper later in the semester, yes, it will have a position there that you're arguing for, whether you actually believe it or not, right? It's the one that you're arguing for in the paper. Okay, so if there's any questions or concerns about that, please contact me and let me know. So Friday, you got writing exercise 2, which is a 350-word discussion board post on a controversial topic, and you're explaining why it's controversial. And then, right, you have to make 2 responses. Now, they should be substantial things like, hey, have you thought about it from this perspective? Or maybe this is why it's controversial. Or maybe this also, right, might be something, if you were going to write about it, that you would consider for this position. So your response also doesn't have to show your position, but should be helpful about that topic somehow there. Okay, so in general, right, that's the assignment. You're also doing quiz 8, quiz 9, which are departmental quizzes. Then I think we've got 6 quizzes or something left after that. So read the articles, answer the questions about them. One of them is about censorship. One of them is about Martin Luther King, and he breaks down certain main points with examples, right? That's why they're exemplification, right, writing assignments. So we're going to start working on this exemplification paper. You are going to have an outline and a rough draft for this one. Okay, so start thinking about which of those 2 topics you want to write about. So second and third paper, I went with the departmental ones. Final paper, it's going to be my idea of what writing should be again, right? Just mine, which is open to be an argumentative paper. So if you are very interested in a particular topic, start thinking about those, and you can ask me about it. You will have required sources there. So now the rest of the semester, we're really focusing on the writing itself, right? The essays there. I'm going to be going over MLA next time. So, controversial topic, quizzes. That's it for this week, but we're also going to be writing an outline for that paper 2 assignment there. That'll be due pretty soon after that, so you might want to check the schedule. I need to check the schedule to see what the due date is, but it's not this week, so you got a little bit of time for that. Any questions or concerns, contact me, let me know, and we'll go over MLA format next week. Have a good one.